Well, hello there. Stephen Bonacore, the Podfather of Gaming, coming to you today with maybe a new series that I'm going to start doing called The Podfather Loves. Dot, dot, dot. And in this case, we're going to be talking about Dune, War for Arrakis. Brand new release from Simon and its potential comparisons to certain other games. Some people have called this Dune for the Ring or The War for Dune. If you don't know, that is the collector's edition of War of the Ring, my number one game. The game itself. I happen to have the collector's edition, my pride and joy. But today we're going to talk about this game, maybe why there are certain comparisons back to that game, and why this game is absolutely beautiful. I love it, with an amazing artwork, which I'm going to show you later. And already I've predicted that this is going to be my number one game of 2024. Let's get to a little bit about what this game is about and how this game plays. In Dune War for Arrakis, you're playing either the House Atreides or the House Harkonnen. It's a dice-driven, card-driven, dudes on a map war game. What other game does that describe very well? Well, of course, it also describes War of the Ring. And the second direct comparison between the two is that two of the three designers of War of the Ring are the designers of this game. Francesco Nepitello and Marco Maggi are the designers of this game, which came out from Simon just recently, early 2024. What are you doing? Your objective in this game is very asymmetrical depending on the side you are playing. Let me take a look quickly at the track over here called the Prescience track. I am sitting where the House Atreides player would be. And right over here, you're going to attempt to go up on this track with these tokens. And you're going to be doing them via finding things on the board where a combination of red, green, and yellow numbers that you have collected will get you to your objective. In this, very nice, upside down. In this particular objective, which has some nice theme on it, it shows that you need 9 green, 6 yellow, and 4 red prescience. If you get to that, at the end of the round, as the Atreides player, you win. One of the ways you can achieve that is by, I'm looking for it, there it is, right there. Let me zoom in. Is what's called an ecological testing station. Why is it called that? I don't know. I don't know much about the Dune universe, but I'm going to explain to you why, even without knowing a lot about the Dune universe, this is amazing. These ecological testing stations, underneath each one, it has a token. This token is randomized. You'll turn it over if you get it. I'm cheating by looking at this. Nobody can ever look at this token until it's discovered. It is 1 green prescience. Don't do that. I would never cheat. And you'd go up 1 on the prescience track in green on your way to what I said here was 9 green prescience. That's the basic way of going up, though there are some other ways that you can achieve prescience. Oh, yes, let me go directly to those, and I apologize for moving back and forth here. These cards are the prescience cards. You notice there are 3 cards. I have to move this so you can see all 3 of them. There we go. And I can move in. If you achieve the objective on this card, Paul drinks the water of life. I remember that from the first movie in the 1980s, that very odd movie. You then get 3 prescience. You would move up 3 on the prescience track. Notice there are symbols on this track in various places, which remind you that different things happen when you get to those locations. You would claim the card. This one says you claim the card during the action resolution phase, so basically during your turn, while this card says it's an end of round. Do collecting for the planting, and if you have, there are Atreides legions in 3 different plateau areas, you would then collect 2 yellow prescience, like so. And then the other card there is going to give you both green and red, 1 of each. Very simple card to do. So that, plus, as I mentioned, the very cool ecological testing stations, which are thematically left over from the Imperium, and for whatever reason, the Atreides really need them for prescience. So those 2 are the ways of getting, basically, prescience to get toward your goal in the game as the Atreides player. The House Harkonnen player, and I'm now sitting on the side of the board that probably the House Harkonnen player should sit on, you're looking to get 10 supremacy points. Obviously, you start out at 0, and you're looking to go up that track to get 10 points. And you notice there are symbols on that track that also tell you when certain things will trigger during the game, and those things are very important. Obviously, they will help the Harkonnen player. How do you get these supremacy points? Well, the House Atreides player is wants to really protect these steeches, bases, homes, I don't know, they're places out in the desert. Wants to protect this. I may, if I was the House Atreides player, look at this at any time. It is another token, and I could look at it, flip it, and say, whoa, this is either going to be a 1, a 2, or a 3. If House Harkonnen, these guys in red, are able to take this steech, the steech is removed, and they claim 3 points on their supremacy track. And of 10, that's a lot. So they got to be very careful about protecting these steeches. How do you go about attacking, defending, and doing all this stuff? Well, let's take a look at House Atreides first. The first thing to mention is that there are units in the games that have various powers. There are regular units. They have a round base. There are elite units. They have a square base. This simply makes it easy for you to figure out who they are on the board. And there are super elite units, which have actually a name from like the show, which I don't know. I'm not a Dune fan per se. I like the movies. I don't know the books. Those are called Fedaykin. All right, super elites. And you'll recognize this again from the War of the Ring if you're a fan of that. Regulars, elites, super elites are new, and also this over here, that is a leader. They're slightly different colored, so you can tell them apart from the other pieces. Now, at any time during the game as a free action, I can look at this at any time, first of all. And then I can turn it over at any time. It's force. If I'm attacked, it's a force. But this location, this steech, which has a 2, I'm picking all these ones that are really, really amazing. I would then not only have just the leader there, I would then put these units there. So I would end up putting an elite, and I would end up putting a regular. No, there are no super elites there. And I would turn this over so that the Harkonnen players saw what they were waging for, what war they were waging here. This is then thrown out of the game. This is a starting deployment token in the game for the Atreides player. And then we would go into battle. Now, we're way ahead of ourselves in talking about battle, but in general terms, and making some relation back to the War for the Ring, regular units, elite units, and they can take like 2 hits, just like in War of the Ring, and leaders, which give bonuses based on leader cards. That's a Fedaykin or a Naib leader, and he might hit for 1 damage. The bottom of the card shows that. You would roll dice based on the strength of the defender and, of course, of the attacker coming in. You add the victory points being wagered for, considered a defense bonus. So you would say 1, 2 for units. The units are just counted. 1, 2, 3, 4. I'd roll 4 dice. And the leader doesn't get to have a die rolled for it, but certain die faces will change the outcome you might get. As I showed you over here, you might get more damage by looking at it. And then the attacking units, of course, which could be these guys over here. Probably not. They're too far away. Where are they? There they are. They're on the North Pole. These guys could be the ones coming in. And the same type of bases are here. This is an elite unit. This is a regular unit. In fact, there's 3 regular units here. I've actually set this game up, and it's ready to play right now. So I randomized, and that's what showed up. But they also have the super elite units, which they call Sardaukar from the lore of Dune. If you're a Dune fan, this does drip in theme. So here's the heart of the game. I mentioned action dice selection. At the top of the turn, both players are going to draw 1 card from each of their planning decks. This is the Atreides planning deck, and this is the Fremen ally planning deck. I haven't explored the system enough to tell you, this is more powerful than this is. Probably not, because you can play this game with 3 and 4 players, and guess what? Somebody's going to be playing like the Fremen allies. And as you know a little bit from the lore, right now, that's Paul Atreides. Later on, Paul Atreides can ascend to become Paul Muad'Dib, and he becomes a Fremen ally, not actually House Atreides. But I digress. You'll draw these 2 cards, put them in your hand. Your hand limit is 6, but you don't discard till the end, a little bit again, unlike War of the Ring, where you discard immediately. You'll roll these dice, and you will take these dice and put them on your leader, on your board, player board. That's a leadership symbol. This is another leadership symbol. This is a deployment symbol. This is a house symbol. That means that I can take each of those actions during my game round. Now, they're gonna have various things that you'll be able to do. And again, War of the Ring, this is like the army dice, and this is like this is the character dice. This is like the army dice. This is like the muster dice. Things like that. But they're not exactly. So don't think that I'm telling you that, well, this is just a reskin of War of the Ring. It absolutely is not. You notice I've placed the characters here that are associated with each one of these cards. Now, this means that the character is ready. This means that Lady Jessica is ready if after I've taken her specific action, I could turn it over to indicate that, see, it says she's in play at the start of the game. This big full color thing means that she's been used. Her special action has been used once already for the round, so I couldn't use her special action again. I can still use the standard action of draw 2 planning cards, just not to draw 1 planning card, then play a planning card, which is very, very powerful. To get leaders out, you're going to probably need to use your deployment actions. You deploy units, 1 leader, either a regular leader or a named leader. So I can grab, if I want Paul Muad'Dib, just Paul Atreides, and bring him in to a Steech on the board. Place them both on the Steech. So that's how you deploy. This is how you move legions around. And this is how you can also attack, by the way, here, as you notice. And with the leadership, you can move around legions. A legion's an army. Bring in the character, or make it a surprise attack where you get a bonus when you do a surprise attack. Now, there are 4 dice. There are 4 dice here only on the side of House Atreides. But. Oh, and House Atreides has another power here that almost never gets a card put on it. Desert Power. They can take this action, one of these actions, on Desert Power as long as they have less unused dice. So let me state that again, because I'm not even sure I understood. If you have less unused dice, now, right, we have 4 Atreides unused dice, then on the Harkonnen side, unused, you may take the desert power actions. Now, you're always going to have less dice initially, because you have 4 unused dice. They have 8 unused dice. So technically, they may have less because of the spice must flow board. We're going to get there in a bit. But for the most part, since you're starting out with 4 dice, plus the Bene Gesserit token, which can be used at any time for a one-time use, another die on your turn, but you have to elect when you roll the dice, you have to elect if you're going to use it or not. If you have less dice, 4 versus the 8, or maybe they have 6, we'll see that in a second, you can then use these desert power tokens and the desert power actions. And these actions are incredibly powerful for the Atreides player because you can place, see all of this big pool over here? This is the pool of 16 worm sign tokens. You can during the game, when you have less unused dice, you may place 2 worm sign tokens. For instance, maybe I do this. I place one here, which gives me a bridge to this. And let's see, I place one here, starting a bridge. Now, why are these worm sign tokens so important? Got to show you the back of this card here. You're able to sand ride. There's also a guerrilla training thing. Not important at the moment. Sand ride. This is the way for you, as the Atreides player, to move legions, armies, from one sector, from one area of a sector, into another one. You're riding on the worms. You're riding through. And that would include even if, for instance, a Harkonnen army was there, a legion. You can ride across these. That's the one and very important, maybe most important reason to put out worm sign tokens when you can. The second thing is that these tokens, when they're on the board at the end of the round, and they can obviously be there with vehicles and armies from Harkonnen, because you put them there, you're going to flip them over. And this is going to tell us what happens in these regions. If you get this symbol in a deep desert, a desert that's against the board, that symbol, you're going to bring in a worm. If that symbol is not in a deep desert like this, nothing happens. This symbol, regardless, nothing happens. I'm going to turn over a few more so I can find the other one. And this symbol says another worm is coming in. If there was a harvester there getting spice for Harkonnens, it would be gone, eliminated. If there was a legion there, they would have to run to another adjacent area, and you, as the Atreides player, gets to push them to a bad location. So placing out worm sign tokens is hugely important. You could also move sandworms, move 2 of them. So, and they move 2 spaces at a time. So, for instance, I could take this and go 1, 2 and put it over here. Maybe I'm helping to protect that sector with the ecological testing zone from those bad Harkonnens over there. And you may attack with a sandworm. When you attack, you roll 2 of the attack dice and you apply hits to the Harkonnen units. The sandworms do not affect, are not bad at all for the Atreides player, and in fact, they are quite helpful, especially for that power of doing the sand riding, as I mentioned. These worms become, let's just say it was like this at one point. Hopefully, let me show you. There we go. And you had the tokens out, with the worm out, because these tokens will flip at the end of the round. You can then ride across all of this to go attack the evil Harkonnens that are over here, or to get to another ecological testing center, for instance. This is a good time to quickly mention the combat dice. You're going to roll one die for each unit that is in combat. And that would include, right, I just mentioned a second ago that if you're attacking with a sandworm, you get to roll exactly 2 of the dice and apply the hits. That's a hit. That's a shield. It would not be a hit. In combat between 2 legions, you'd get to roll 1 die for each one of the units. Leaders are not considered a unit. On each side, let's say I had all 6 dice. Boom, I rolled that for the Atreides, and the Harkonnens had 6. It was a big battle, and they rolled that. We would then take a look. This is a shield. This would knock out my hit. This shield would knock out his hit. Oops, I didn't even see what that was. Then we would apply the rest of these. Okay, there's another hit on the Atreides side against Harkonnen. That would block that one. 2 hits. Another one. Okay. So I would score no hits for the Atreides side in this case. They would score 2. However, if I had a leader, like that guy, right here, then that guy, that gives me a hit. So in this exact case, Harkonnens would score 2 hits, Atreides would score 1 hit. And then, like in War of the Ring, we keep making that comparison, but they're not the same games. In this case, 2 hits applied in this direction, in the Atreides direction, they could downgrade elite units into regular units for each hit if they'd like. So you'd keep the same number of units, which keeps the same number of dice, and that's usually a good idea. And similarly going in the other direction as well. So that's a very general overview of how the combat dice work, which you'll notice are similar again to that other game I keep mentioning. If a named leader, here's good old Paul Atreides, if he was in a combat and he got taken as a loss, he would come over here to the regeneration tank. And this is the way to get your named leaders back in the game. Then every action die that you use, every time you use a die, bring it up to use, you move Paul Atreides 1 more. Use another die, moves again. Use another die, he's out, and he then can come back into the game using a deployment action. You'll see on the Harkonnen side, you have exactly the same regeneration tank. However, I guess it's not as efficient. It takes an extra turn in fact, 2 extra turns it looks like, to get a Harkonnen leader regenerated to bring them back in the game. This also is a good time to talk about stacking limits during combat, because I just talked about those combat dice. Now, you may have, and we will show this as the example because there's so many units right here in the Harkonnen area. You may have up to 6 units in a given area. Let's just pick one right here. This area right here. We have a leader, doesn't count as a unit. We have then 1, 2, 3, 4 units. This area can have up to 2 more units. Those units could be regulars, they could be elites, or they could be the super elites, Sardaukar in this case. You may have as many leaders as you want, though. When you're assigning those dice, the attack dice, to a power, only 1 die can be added for each leader. So having multiple leaders can enable you to get the benefit of each of those special stars that you roll on the dice. You notice these, by the way, these bigger things, these are settlements. There are 6 settlements, including the North Pole over there. One of them is actually Arrakis, and the other one is a large settlement called, I don't know the stuff, Carthage. Again, not big on the lore of this, but those are beautiful miniatures to add there. Settlements, if they are captured, the settlement is destroyed. Right? So if I take the North Pole over there with possibly some of those lovely Atreides units that are going to come in, I would take that, and you can no longer muster, you can no longer deploy into that area. One last quick thing about combat and leaders in War of the Ring. Leaders enable you to re-roll dice. They do not do that here. You have to roll those little special symbols to get to use the power that the leader brings into combat. Also, very different and importantly between the two systems, that the leaders can be taken as casualties. So they're not a unit, but they are a unit. I mean, it sounds a little weird, I know, but they're not a unit for stacking limits. 6 is your stacking limit, but they are a unit that because they can be taken as a casualty to keep your 6 units there so you can roll the 6 dice. It's a very interesting take on a new implementation of that combat system. A quick note is that this is a variable setup. So this game, you would have one leader, generic leader, and you have one special elite, starter core, and 3 regulars. This would have been the draw that put this randomly. You'll notice there's 1 silver, 1 black. You randomize all of these things, and all over, you turn them over, and you put the units there. Unlike War of the Ring, which is very static, always the same setup in the beginning, which makes sense. It's an actual strategic, much more strategic game. It's a slightly more tactical game. That's set up always the same way. This randomized the setup both for the Atreides and for the Harkonnen. Once I set those up, these are out of the game forever. So are the other tokens, and so are the House Atreides tokens. Once they're used, they're turned over. We find out what we're going to bring out, which is a free action. You do it any time. 1 regular, 1 elite. Then this token would be discarded from the game. And you put the miniatures there. Sorry for the board glare there, but here is House Harkonnen's player board. You'll notice House Harkonnen has 8 dice. You would do the same thing in the beginning of a Harkonnen turn. You'll take 1 planning card from the House Harkonnen deck and from the Allied deck, the Harkonnen Allied deck. I don't know if it has a name or not. I apologize. And put them into your hand. You would roll all of these dice. After they're rolled, you would take them and you would put them into the spaces, doing this using the dice here without doing the roll. You'll get the point in a second, like this. And there's a house die, and there's a leadership die. And those would be the actions that I can take for my given turn. And they're similar to the action on the other side, on the Atreides side, but the Harkonnen is different. The Harkonnen are a little akin to the shadow of War of the Ring. They are evil. They are trying to kill, and take over those locations, while Atreides is trying to, by attrition, try to whittle those Harkonnens down and try to grab those ecological testing centers, which is going to give them the prescience points. Essentially, they're trying to get the natives of the land to be on their side. Oops. If I had rolled, say, another one of these, and there were 4 of those, I could then take this, and I could put this in any place with the least dice. So now notice that they're all the same. I could then pick, I believe, and this hasn't happened to me before, I believe I could then pick the one that it goes to. But say there was no die here, I would have to make it a house die. But you get the dice. Now, as I mentioned, there are 8 dice here, and over there, way over there, there's only 4 dice for poor House Atreides. House Atreides is going to use those initial actions probably to get some worm sign tokens on the board. They get worm sign on the board, they can ride the worms to different locations. That's huge. Okay? Meanwhile, after the cards have been drawn and the dice have been rolled, House Harkonnen will then deploy vehicles. Look at these sculpts. I mean, I've got to say a couple things about the sculpts now. First of all, Simon, in their usual amazing way, has just hit it out of the park with these things. Just hit it out of the park. These are harvesters. Apologies if that doesn't give you a good thing. These are harvesters. These are your ornithopters. You'll see they're on stands, right? Great details and everything on these guys. And these are your carryalls. They can save your harvesters toward the end of the round. The next phase is the part where the vehicles are deployed. Vehicles are deployed based on this chart here, this board called the spice must flow, because of course House Harkonnen is in charge of the spice. When we start the game, you'll notice that this row, all of these tokens are pointing to this row. There are 3 tokens there: blue, the black, and the yellow, which are akin to those 3 Imperium bands. If these tokens slip down below here, let's just say that this you make this go down because you couldn't pay the spice, one of your dice will not be able to be used in the next round. So this is a way for the Atreides player to try to get less die, less actions for the Harkonnen player who have so many actions. But of course, Atreides likes to use those desert power things. So this will not allow them to use that many. This is a great, interesting balance between using the dice you have and the desert powers, and it's really just really cool. As you go down this track, and more dice, end up needing to be on this track because you have not harvested enough spice, for instance, you then get actually more vehicles. In the beginning, you get 3 harvesters, 2 ornithopters, 1 carryall. Then you get 4-2-1, and then you get 5-3-1, etc., etc. And you place them on the board. Well, where do you place them? Well, House Harkonnen is allowed to place them anywhere they want in the desert for the harvester, of course. If they place it along the edge of the board, if you recall when I showed you, there's more likelihood that a sandworm will appear there. But they get 2 spice if they do that. If they put it in a little closer, there's less likely a chance. But they only get 1 spice. They could put it really close in here, and they're very protected from lots of things, including attacks by the Atreides. But they'll only be collecting 1. I was very aggressive when I played this, by the way. I've just played 2 games of this with Roy Canaday of the Dice Tower. Roy is a great guy. He drove up here from Homestead, Florida. I lost both to him, but 1 game was very close. The other one, he destroyed me, but he's a great player, so it's okay. So you place these out. These will harvest spice. These ornithopters will move your troops faster. Let's say I put an ornithopter there, and I get 2 of them on this round, and I put an ornithopter here. Okay, you saw that placement. 1's there, and 1's there. This is a good time to mention that the board has different types of regions. Let me zoom back out. All right? There's different terrain, and there's different regions. The terrain is mountains, the very dark area, plateaus, the orangey areas there, and where the Harkonnen settlements are, and the desert, which has 2 types, regular desert and deep desert. Like I said, more chance of sandworms showing up in deep desert. And finally, it has a minor erg, which is this ripply stuff here where sandworms won't show up. Probably there's like rock underneath it or something like that. I'm sure there's a reason in the books. But I digress. There's also sectors here. So these blue lines, blue-white dashed lines, are sectors. Like this and like this. So there's essentially 4 outer sectors on this board. If I go way out, it's a little hard to see, but 4 outer sectors, north, northwest, northeast, southeast, southwest. And then there's 4 inner sectors, another one on each one of those points. And the North Pole, that's the North Pole, is part of all of the inner sectors. The ornithopters, that's why I'm talking about the sectors, can carry, they will carry troops, moving them 2 spaces versus the 1 standard movement that they have, and they can carry anything in a sector that they're attached to. So this ornithopter can transport any 1 of these troops 2 spaces. So this troop here would be a very good candidate. They might take, this ornithopter might take them and move them 1, 2. And that's pretty close to getting to a Atreides Steech. It could move him 1, 1, 2. And put them in this lake, also very close. They can't make it any place in 1. Quick note, these double lines here are high mountainous areas. You can't move across them by just moving, but an ornithopter will go over them. Okay? And it is here, and they're over here and there. So the ornithopter mechanic is really interesting. It gives you this great flexibility of being able to move your units faster. And they come back, well, every round they're going to come back based again on the spice must flow and where they are. You can sacrifice some dice here to get more and more of the vehicles onto the board for you. The carryall is the last vehicle we have not talked about. Let's say that Atreides put two harvesters in this sector, and they did not have this here. They placed a carryall there. Later on, when worms attack, remember, very good chance of them attacking here in the deep desert. If a worm attacks one of them, but not the other one, which is randomized by those worm sign tokens, that vehicle can save one. Let's say it missed both. But let's say that a worm came up in both of these sections. Well, the worm would eat this harvester. Here, the carryall would save it. You spend the carryall to save the harvester, and it will eat and it will harvest 2 spice. This would end up sitting here very menacingly for just a moment, and then you would harvest the spice and it goes away. All vehicles come off the board at the end of each round, but you probably would have used your ornithopters to make movements, and you hopefully have used your harvesters to harvest more spice. The amount of spice you get will change where these tokens will move on the Spice Must Flow board. I'm not going to go into it exactly. You have to keep a token at that level. You need to spend 2 spice to move it up 1. You need to spend 2 spice, I think, something like that. It doesn't really matter right now. The point is, that's how you're going to spend spice. However, another very important thing about spending spice is that on the supremacy track, if you are at or below 5 supremacy, you got up to here, say, you're at 5, you can spend 3 spice if you have it, or if you have it, and you didn't spend it to try to save your to not to move those tokens down on the spice. Okay, you can spend 3 to gain 1 more victory point, 1 more supremacy point. You can only do that in this section of the track up to there, and then you can't do it anymore. You got to earn the rest of those via hitting these Steeches. Whoa, to get that one, I better protect it because 1, 2, 3, and they're almost at game end condition. I'd like to do a little bit more of pointing out how amazing these minis are. This is the Flying Fat Man, as they said in the original movie, the Baron Harkonnen. Here we have Captain Aramsham. Both of those are starting characters that you have on the board. Here is Beast Rabin. These minis are beautiful, and in fact, they're not only just good looking, they're even different. Not the main characters, but there are multiple sculpts for the different units in the game. So, for instance, this is a regular unit. It's got a round base. It's a regular unit. This has got a round base. It's a regular unit, but it's a different sculpt. So you're going to have these just beautiful and easy to recognize due to the bases sculpts that you can play with. And the same exact thing happens on the Atreides side. They're absolutely beautiful, and Simon has just hit it out of the park with that and the entire production. So I started discussing the game round. I said you start by drawing 2 planning cards. You reveal the 3 prescience cards. The Harkonnens then put out their vehicles. And then you go into the action resolution phase, which you spend the dice, right? I spend a die here. Then it's actually the Atreides go first. They would go probably do some of the putting out of the worm sign tokens. These would all be on this side. They'll put some of these out. Then the Harkonnen player would do that. They would do maybe some more worm signs. Maybe they'll get some people onto the board. And we do that until all dice are spent. There is also a Bene Gesserit token that only one is in the game to start, and that's on the side of House Atreides. They can earn more, and Harkonnens can earn some as well. They are essentially 1 extra die for a turn, and you kind of think of them a little bit like the ring tokens in War of the Ring. I keep going back to that because this has a DNA with it, but it's different. So you spend all of the dice that you had allocated onto your board. If any of them were out over here, like those 2 dice, they could not be used. Only these 6 dice could be used by House Harkonnen. You then go through and the House Atreides then places a worm sign token in all desert areas with a Harkonnen Legion or Harvester. So any place that Harkonnen units showed up, they would place these tokens, right? Let's just assume for a moment that those are the places they put them. Immediately, these would all be turned over, and effects would occur. This says, bring a worm to this region. This says nothing. And the reason it says this is, even though it doesn't have a worm on it, this means in deep desert, a worm will show up. Here, this means nothing happens, no matter where it is, and there it shows a worm. You bring a different worm to here. There are 4 of these large worms that can be brought in, and then they're over here. Where are they? There they are. There's 4 there. There's 2 more there. There's 2 on the board. There's that one there called Wildmaker, and there's this humongous one called the Old Man of the Desert, which is a special rule in the game you can bring in. So you bring in all of that. You then deal with if there's any Harkonnen units. I'm going to grab some units here. I'm going to place them in the desert. You're going to roll hits on them because the Harkonnens don't like the desert. Atreides can stay in the desert. Harkonnens don't like it. If they get hit, they've got to downgrade units. So the attrition goes on if they leave their units out there. And that's the Coriolis Storm phase. Then you're going to harvest spice if there was anything that's left on the board that was not eaten by sandworms. You're going to get 2 spice on the deep desert, 1 spice in the not deep desert, but in the desert. And then you're going to spend the spice over here to keep these things in a certain area or to let them fade down. So you're going to lose dice, but you get more vehicles. And at the end of the round, you're going to see if the Atreides player can claim any of the prescience cards and then go up on that track. And if the Atreides player at that point, they can show their secret projected card and win the game. It's at the end of the round. At any time that the Harkonnen player reaches 10 victory points, 10 supremacy points, they would win. And that's a snap win at any time it gets there. You refresh your cards, discard other cards, and you then move back to the top of the round. And there you have it. That's an overview, preview, I don't know, of Dune War for Arrakis. I've mentioned a lot of similarities with War of the Ring, my #1 game. But this game, while it's like a brother of that game, it shares, if you know the battles of the Battle of the Five Armies game, which was from the same designers of War of the Ring, exactly, that is closer to War of the Ring, but a tactical game than this is. This is like almost a maturing, I would say, of the system in War of the Ring. Yes, the Podfather loves this game. It it hits on everything for me. And I am not a fan of the Dune universe. I don't dislike the Dune universe. I just don't know it. I never read the books. I saw the first kind of bizarre movie with Sting and Patrick Stewart way back in like '84. Um, we won't even talk about it. I'm looking forward to seeing part 2 of the new Dune movie because I like the first one. It's a very well done science fiction movie, but I don't have that connection to the IP the way I have this tremendous love of Tolkien. I've read all things Tolkien and I love everything in the Rings saga. But everything about this game speaks to me as a board gamer. It does everything right. The feel of the action dice and the way you use them to power up your various powers you have in the game and to bring out cards. Any die can be used to play a card, by the way, which gives you obviously some more special things that are going to happen for you. The way that the House Atreides player can utilize the worms to attack, to move, sand ride, worm ride, whatever they call it in this game. It just is just a well done action selection die card driven war game. The cards in this game are a little less powerful and definitely not multi-use the way they are in War of the Ring. But this game really is absolutely amazing. Even what they did with the box here, is House Harkonnen side, House Atreides side. They put the words face up on both sides. They knocked it out of the park in every little aspect of this game. I didn't even mention that in the rules, here they are. In the rules, there are possible futures section where you can, like Duke Leto, I know him from the movie, I remember him, you can have him in the game early on. Okay, that's pretty cool. So it's variable characters might be in the game based on what's called possible futures. And there's 7 possible futures. Long live the Duke. Obviously, Duke Leto's in the game. The Masters of Assassins is 2. The Judge of the Change. All of these are just a little difference so that once you've explored the system, the way it works with the starting characters, you play some variants. I mentioned these worms, right? This is a great, unbelievable, huge sculpt towering over the board. And this is a bigger one called Wildmaker. Unbelievable. And then this monster, the Old Man of the Desert. And there's a rule. It's just an optional rule to add. It's not even a variant or anything. It's just you can add this rule in. The Old Man of the Desert takes up an entire sector, and the Atreides player can ride him across the entire sector, say northeast sector to southwest sector. Can ride through Old Man of the Desert because he's so big. My 15-year-old self is thinking these things might look a little bit like something. The worms that I used to dig up in my backyard. That's what I'm talking about. So they are a little bit interesting looking, but really, they're beautiful sculpts in the end. And once you look at all that stuff and you're still not ready to, you still want more, it already has 2 expansions. The Spacing Guild and Smugglers. The Spacing Guild will take up even more. By the way, did you notice how much space this game takes up? This is a very large game table. This game table is the Origins game table from Game Theory Tables. I don't get any money from anybody to do videos. I don't monetize, but they're a great company, great table, and it's a very big table. And I didn't even have enough room really for this game. Certainly, all the miniatures. I haven't even shown you all the miniatures. The miniatures here are just some of the miniatures, and the maxis over there. And there's another 50, 60, 80 miniatures. Maybe I'll do that after I finish here to show you over there. It'll take up even more room with this because you put another track out with these 2 ships that you're trying to get to the end of the track, and then they drop off troops from the Spacing Guild. And this one, obviously, is Smugglers. And it looks like, haven't explored it, shrink wrap, as you can see. I just got this game like days ago. It's like another faction, the Smugglers faction. While the war between the Harkonnens and the Atreides rages across Arrakis, it gives ample opportunity for daring entrepreneurs to carve out a profit harvesting spice. So it's all about the smugglers that you might find in this world. I'm very impressed, as you can tell. The Podfather loves Dune, War for Arrakis. If you're a fan of the War of the Ring, I would say this is a must buy, unless you like, I can only have so many dudes on the map kind of game, and that will suffice for me because that's my theme, and I don't need another game that has some similarity. That's my game, and that will still be my game, always be my game. I'm really caught up on this, and the level of the strategic level of the game versus a more tactical level here. I like that. But if you either don't have that or you don't care for Lord of the Rings, how dare you, but you want a dudes on the map game with really modern, streamlined, well thought out mechanics, using action dice selection, this is your game. Then you don't need that one, and you should get this one. I'm going to say it again. The Podfather loves Dune, War for Arrakis. As I promised, here's more of the miniatures in the game, more of the House Atreides miniatures, more vehicles for House Harkonnen, more miniatures of all types. There's some leaders there, including, remember, every one of the named leaders has a different sculpt. Every one of these are unnamed leaders, and they're a different sculpt. And all of the other Atreides units. So there's 160, 180 miniatures in this game. It's really, really full of great goodness. These boards right here are 4 boards that you would use with 3 and 4 player. This is your new House Harkonnen board. You have a Carino ally. That was the name of their allies. I forgot that before, but again, not a huge fan of the IP, but love the game. House Atreides board, Fremen ally board. So if you're playing with 3 and 4 players, these would get into the game versus the ones that we saw while I was doing the video. Also, to point out that there is a solo mode as well. You're playing House Atreides in the solo mode, and things are happening where the bot is playing House Harkonnen. There's a lot of things that I haven't mentioned. I am certain. This was a high-level overview of the game. I'm not teaching you the game. And the game is a little intimidating. I guarantee that certain players will be worried when they read this rule book. But if you understand War of the Ring, you'll get this game. If you don't, if you've never had any experience with that, I recommend searching out a how to play video. There is at least one from Australia that does a pretty good job of doing that. Check that out. This was my overview video. This was The Podfather Loves War for Arrakis, Dune War for Arrakis. These chips are great. By the way, I didn't mention these are the deployment tokens. When you deploy new units, these are your starting deployment tokens. So you can bring out more Atreides units. I have this bag draw. There's a lot. There's a lot here. There's a lot in this game. There's miniatures galore. There's beauty in this game. And the mechanics are really well thought out. Maturing, I would say, in a lot of ways for the War of the Ring system. It does not replace the War of the Ring for me, but it will stand on its own as a great game, something that I will seek out and I will go to, and I will play, and maybe it'll even get me to read the books. The first book. Well, I'm definitely looking forward to the movie coming out soon. This is Stephen Bonacore, the Podfather of Gaming, and the Podfather loves Dune, War for Arrakis.